Welcome to another Confluence podcast. This week, we've got a great guest, Adam Chernick. I've known Adam for several years. He worked at a firm called Shop that many of you may be familiar with. That's when I first met him. He was working with Shop, worked with HOK in the past as well. He's also participated since the first Confluence event. He's been active and participating each year along the way. So this year, it was great. Adam's now moved on and is working at Amazon AWS, where he's on a team that helps companies build prototypes and kind of prototype using new technologies, ultimately that may be able to take advantage of the AWS platform, kind of as its backbone. But it was great this year, as you'll hear in this interview. Adam spoke about just on the AI side, how much the technology is rapidly becoming approachable. The abstractions from the core are there now and allowing teams, to really build on top of this and begin to experiment. So he's right at the forefront of the team there at AWS. It's helping customers do this. During the talk, that he gave, he was covering everything from how this is impacting reality capture and LLMs and BIM data, to 3D asset creation and just all the different ways that AI is poised to really affect and change what's going on inside the industry.
Yeah, let me give you a little bit more information about Adam so you can understand where he is and where he's coming from. Adam is a senior spatial computing solutions architect at AWS. He's focused on AR and VR and emerging technologies. He previously led an applied research team that focused on software development and innovation at Shop Architects, which is where I met Adam. He was doing a lot of AR and VR development in iOS and using Unity, things like that. So very architectural kind of background there. And as Randall said, he was, I think, at HOK before that. He's worked on projects such as World Trade Center 3, the YouTube headquarters, U.S. embassies, and super tall towers. He has designed, built, and launched applications for immersive mediums and is a frequent speaker on emerging technologies at events and universities, including MIT, Yale, and Columbia. His applications have been nominated for awards, featured in museums, and written about in publications, including the New York Times. So no stranger to AEC, no stranger to technology, and it was great to hear from him at this event, see what's on his plate, what's on his radar right now. I kind of think of them as like a skunkworks team, right? Like they're available to help customers do things that they can't do using AWS, but like he says, anything that adds the Z coordinate system to it, anything that gets 3D, that's what his team focuses on at AWS. So it's pretty cool, and it's always great to catch up with Adam. He's a super approachable guy, the nicest guy you'll ever meet, and so I always love catching up with him as well.
Yep, I was just going to add, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. So it's always fun to be around Adam and to hear what he's working on, and he's always cheerleading the advancement of technology and the use of these technologies in the industry. So just a great asset to the industry, and we're glad to have him here on the podcast.
All right, well, let's get into the interview. Welcome back to the Confluence podcast. And today we have special guest, Adam Chernick. And Randall, I would love it if you would introduce Adam. You've definitely known him longer than I have, but I've had the pleasure of getting to know him over the past couple of years, and we have a lot in common. And I'm excited to hear this kind of retelling of a story we recently heard at Confluence. So take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Evan, and welcome, Adam. Yeah, I guess Adam, known each other maybe 5 years now, going on 4 or 5 years. And maybe I'll let you tell the story. Adam's currently at Amazon, as we said in the intro, working on the AWS team. But before that, he had a life in architecture and was at Shop Architects. So, and we just obviously came off the Confluence event talking about AI and machine learning, and Adam was kind enough to participate and gave a great presentation. So that's what we're going to kind of run back through here, kind of spread the word and have that discussion. But maybe for the audience's sake, you can give us just a little bit of your background, Adam, and talk about your journey from Shop to getting to Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you for having me first and foremost. Very excited to be here, feeling thankful, and Confluence was a great event. It was amazing to be out in Kentucky and and have some bourbon and nerd out with all of the AEC tech minds out there. I had an
Yep.
absolute blast. And thanks for having me on the podcast. So, a little bit about myself and about how I got to AWS really quick, and then we'll dive into some of the topics. Um, yeah, so again, my name is Adam Chernick. Currently, I am a senior spatial computing solutions architect at AWS, Amazon Web Services. And so I work on a prototyping team that, again, specifically focuses on spatial computing. So, what does that mean? Relatively ambiguous title, right? So, what that means is we help customers with any workload revolving around spatial environments. When XYZs come into play, that's usually when we get tapped on the shoulder. So we do a lot with, point cloud, processing pipelines, photogrammetry types of workloads, virtual reality, augmented reality, real time engine workloads, Web 3D types of different pipelines. So, really, the way that our team works is a customer will come to us with a problem. We'll work backwards, really understand what their needs are, and then figure out a specific scope of a project that we could prototype with them, which would help unblock them to whatever it is they're trying to do. Maybe it's a new feature or functionality in their product. Maybe it is an entirely new product. And if they just weren't able to figure out one piece, we want to come help them figure out how to do that so that they can then grow their business. Yeah, so that's what we do. It's quick 4 to 6 to 8 week engagements where we actually write code, distribute that code back to our customers, and then they can take that into production. Yeah.
Can I just jump in real quick here? I get hung up, or I have gotten hung up in the past when I hear the Amazon part of AWS, and I think one thing: AWS serves so many different kinds of customers, right? And so that's really what you're talking about here is anybody who's building something with AWS as their backend database, cloud hosting service. And so, and you're saying whenever there is something that adds the Z dimension, right? Because screens are 2D, but you're going anything spatial, anything, whether it's Web 3D, like you said, or anything that people are hosting in the cloud that has to do with 3D, they have the option, or they can tap on you guys for help to make something happen.
Yeah, exactly. One other example would be pixel streaming is something that's getting a
Mm,
lot of excitement these days, right? How can we leverage this cloud infrastructure and these graphics cards in the cloud so that now we can run super high fidelity experiences on any device
mm.
so those are the types of things. Amazon was developed to be secure and reliable and performant and for to be able to be accessed by many people around the world. And we had a lot of companies coming to us back in the day and asking Amazon how they did that. How are they able to build this software that is so performant, accessible, secure, hitting all of these different criteria that a lot of businesses are trying to hit. And so Amazon knew that there was an opportunity to allow other companies around the world leveraging the same infrastructure that Amazon uses to host and build Amazon.com. And now we're allowing other people to leverage that same infrastructure, and that is AWS, Amazon Web Services. So that's just a quick version of what AWS is. And so why does AWS care about spatial computing? Because it's an incredibly powerful new medium that is growing in adoption and has a ton of potential use cases in many industries, right? There are a lot of very large companies that clearly care about spatial computing and are investing a lot of money into spatial computing because they realize that there are practical implications to the technology, right? And AEC being one of them. Every single one of the largest firms in the world are using virtual reality, all of them, right? It is an inherently spatial tool for an inherently spatial industry. The product of the industry is three-dimensional, right? And so leveraging these tools that allow you to experience these spaces before they exist is a really powerful thing. So again, why does AWS care, right? There's a ton of data that it takes in order to enable these spatial experiences, and we want to be the best infrastructure in order to leverage and build these spatial experiences.
Maybe, Adam, maybe I can tell a little bit of the backstory. Besides Confluence that just happened here recently, and we had a emphasis on AI and machine learning this year in the talks. But earlier this summer, Adam and I ran into Adam at the Build conference. We were both down in Texas for that, and I had this harebrained, I'll call it, idea that I had been rattling around in my head about some rendering pipeline and some AI and machine learning. And so I knew Adam well enough to know that if I could pitch it to him, that he would at least understand what I was talking about and latch on to that. So we spent a little bit of time earlier this summer, and Adam then was kind of cheerleading me, I think, to like, hey, we should try to testing some of this out. So I'll give Adam credit. He kind of, we hadn't been doing a lot here at AVAIL with AI and machine learning. So it was kind of one of those first things that I was like, we should start doing some testing, kind of seeing, do some prototyping and some research sites. So I reached back out to Adam, and not necessarily with his group, but he helped to connect me to some other parts of Amazon. We're an Amazon customer. We use their services. And so anyway, we kicked off an experiment, and really over the last 60, 90 days, we've been running some experiments. We actually did a presentation at Confluence as well on some of the results of that. But I think, that's the at least connection that I had. And also I think it helps people to maybe understand that, Amazon probably has hundreds of these, services that are part of what make up AWS. So there's lots of capabilities and tools, much like NVIDIA. It's very similar, has lots of APIs and tools. So the trick is get your hands on them with some specific domain problems like we had. How do you get started in that? Are there people that, like Adam, that can help to navigate? So I think it's great that Amazon, has been helpful with their team in helping to, progress. And I characterized it as, I don't want to skin my knees. Like, give me the shortcut. Like, tell me if what we're thinking, tell me what I'm doing wrong. And they were very helpful, at least in our use case for that. But I don't know, Adam, any more you want to shed some light on that?
Not at all. Yeah. Happy to help. It's an exciting use case you're working through. I guess really quickly, I can touch on just some of the high level topics that I covered in my talk at Confluence, just the bullet points, the high level. The talk was called Looking Forward with AI in AEC. Looking Forward with AI in AEC. That was hard. I shouldn't have made that the title. And then it was all focused on abstractions. And so the idea is I wanted to cover accessibility to AI, right? These tools are becoming more and more accessible. They're easier to use. Larger audiences of professionals in different industries can utilize them. And I wanted to look at some of the tools and some of the use cases specific to our industry. So I was looking at reality capture mechanisms, looking at NeRF, which is neural radiance fields. So we talked a little bit about that. And Gaussian splatting, which we mentioned here, which is again, yeah. What was that, Randall?
Oh, as I said, had fun with Gaussian splatting. I think when you were talking about that at the conference, everybody was kind of latched on. It's a funny word.
It is.
Probably
it's a very funny word.
Not know what it is, so it's.
No, absolutely, yeah. It's a really funny name, but it really powerful technology. right? Being able to leverage these neural radiance fields in industry standard software, right? Being able to visualize these new 3D assets. I saw a hashtag, I think the other day, it was #0polygons, which is really interesting, right? There's this shift happening from all mesh, three-dimensional mesh-based objects to now these new, it's a new asset class, right? Where you're able to represent three-dimensional information in what's essentially what's the word that I'm looking for? Particle system.
Like some kind of volumetric visualization.
Yeah, really interesting. So talked a little bit about reality capture, and then talked a little bit about large language models and how they could eventually tie into building information modeling tools. Talked a little bit about robotics and computer vision, and then 3D asset generation and some of the work that NVIDIA is doing on that front as well. And then wrapped up the talk with a case study with one of our AWS customers and how they're using the same tool that AVAIL is using. It's called Amazon Recognition, which is a tool to use computer vision to allow you to pick out specific objects within an image or a set of images. And so there was a specific use case that we covered there that maybe we'll dive into here in a little bit. But yeah, so
I have a question for you, Adam, and for the audience, because I already know the story here, but I would love it if you would repeat it, which is, so Randall mentioned domain expertise. You're talking about things that are useful inside of AEC. Can you connect the dots for the audience to say how you got into where you are now and how your relationship with AEC has gone through the years?
Absolutely, yeah. So I started learning Revit in 2010, and I was using SketchUp in about I believe that it was 2008, 2009 for some fun activities, and then it was while I was in school diving into Autodesk Revit. I had a professor who had a lot of conviction, and they said Revit is the future of architecture, engineering, construction, and he sounded like he knew what he was talking about.
Serious.
And so I installed it that night, ran through every single tutorial that was available on the internet at the time, and convinced a firm to hire me to do BIM. And it was a great experience. Just so I was on the architecture track through and through. I thought that I was going to become a licensed architect, and I did everything you need to do to become a licensed architect except take that test. And so, yeah, worked in Colorado at several architecture firms. I actually helped a few firms transition from 2D AutoCAD workflows over to building information model workflows. And then came to New York, got to work with some high-end residential firms, again, building information model workflows. Got to work on lots of construction document sets, got to be on lots of construction sites, do some construction administration, working with general contractors, got to do the whole thing. Ended up with my first big job offer was with HOK to be a building information modeling specialist. And so that's when I first got to work on some big projects. So I was always on the sort of nerdy technical side of the architecture industry, 3D modeling, embedded metadata, things like that. And then that was my first big role was at HOK. Fast forward, I got to work on some incredible projects, including LaGuardia Airport, World Trade Center 3. I actually led building information model strategy for about a year and a half on a large portion of World Trade Center 3, which was an incredible project, and got to work with an incredible team on that. And at that time, that was actually one of the last two architecture specific projects that I got to work on. At that same time, I was finding out, I was learning about virtual and augmented reality at the time, and having some epiphanies, realizing that the potential implications that this technology could have on the industry. And so I started diving into game engines. Anyway, fast forward again, started writing some code, realized how terrible I was at writing code, right? I didn't know what I was doing, just, beat my head against walls, and ended up building a couple applications, pitching these to leadership at HOK. Basically, the premise was, hey, I just built a virtual reality application and an augmented reality application. We can pipe any new three-dimensional models into this without having to rebuild these applications. We could be the first architecture firm in the world to give a custom application out to our customers, to our clients, and gain a competitive advantage in the industry. And my leadership team liked the idea, and so that was my first gig in research and development, was developing these types of applications for our customers. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all came full circle, from building information modeling into software development and immersive technology, and then just sort of pure software development from there. Dove into game engines, but then also web development. So yeah,
maybe Adam, we're recording this a day after, 2 days after OpenAI just had their dev day and announced their GPTs, and I think there's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of movement over the next, for the foreseeable future around these platforms. Given the framework of your talk at Confluence, where do you see, there's a bunch of areas. There's obviously imaging, image creation, these large language models, the reality capture side, the creation of 3D geometry side. Where, with your AEC hat on and kind of insights into what you're seeing going on at Amazon, can you talk about where you think, where's the low hanging fruit? Where are things going to begin moving very quickly, and where, how would you prioritize what you think what this is going to look like over the next 12, 18, 24 months?
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I would distill that question into what am I most excited about?
That's one way, right? Usually.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's a really good question, and I think that some of the things that are top of mind for me are these reality capture mechanisms, Gaussian splatting, this is zero mesh idea, zero polygon idea, that what used to take 100% mesh-based assets, now it's going to be interesting to see what percentage of future experiences are mesh-based under the hood. Not all applications and use cases need that, right? If you just need visual validation of a specific part or piece has been installed, that doesn't need to be a three-dimensional mesh. That could be a two-dimensional image, or it could be a Gaussian splat. Anyway, so I see huge implications with these, with reality capture mechanisms, with Gaussian splatting and neural radiance fields. That's really exciting to me. Also, large language models, right? You mentioned GPTs. They are getting so good, so fast. It's incredibly exciting. The use cases that I find in my day-to-day is growing rapidly, right? Different ways that I can leverage these tools. I mentioned a few specifics in my talk at Confluence, one of which is, I think a big piece of the puzzle here is integrations, right? And I think we all know it. A lot of the big companies are looking to integrate these large language models into their existing software technology packages, suites. And I think that's a key, right? And I think that AEC sort of needs to take a cue from that. And I think that's the key here, is once we get this LLM integration into Autodesk Revit or, some of these other industry standard tools, it's going to be, the implications are massive, where I'm putting myself back in the seat when I was a building information model manager and I had to coordinate these document sets and make sure that all the settings are correct, and make sure that when these federated models coming from all of these different consultants and stakeholders are working together. There's so many different parts and pieces that process that if I had the ability to use natural language to help me facilitate some of that management, it would have been incredibly powerful, and it would have saved me a lot of time. So I'm excited about integrations with LLMs and tools. So reality capture, LLMs are big. And then the one thing that I'll say is a little bit behind, but still excited about, is 3D asset generation. So there's a lot of people working on text to 3D. It's the golden goose. Everyone wants it, right? I just want to write something out or talk in my phone, or talk to my computer and say, design me a bedroom with a bed and clear story windows and all of the thing, and it just output this beautiful, perfect 3-dimensional asset. We're not there yet. We're a ways away. We're making progress quickly, but there's a long way to go with the technology, I think. So
can you talk a little bit, Adam, about with the capability of the iPhone specifically in the AR kit, and it feels like that has really come a long way since they've released that, and that I've already used it to scan some rooms, and you can get incredibly accurate measurement for a basically prosumer type device like this. Maybe you can talk a little bit about where you think that's going, and have we even started capturing the, no pun intended, the value from that yet before we even skip to this other?
No, we haven't, right? Absolutely. To your point. I mean, now a lot of people have a LiDAR scanner in their pocket. The sort of technology behind capturing these rooms and leveraging those for industry use cases, we really haven't, we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet, in my opinion. I think that there is some really interesting, something that I've thought a lot about is picking the right tool for the job, right? And there are your super high-end, multiple $100,000 LiDAR scanners that get down to incredible accuracies if you need those tolerances, right? If you need a perfectly flat floor slab, or you need that hyper accuracy for whatever your use case is. Maybe you're designing a laboratory or who knows what. And you need that. In a lot of cases, you don't. And so having this ability now to use your phone to capture space very, very quickly is a very powerful thing. And we're seeing, again, I think there's a lack of integrations, Randall, as you mentioned. Now the capturing technologies there haven't been a lot of ways to leverage it, right? To pipe it into, again, industry standard tools and or industry standard software. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
I think about that because I had another person who was at Confluence, was Nick Cameron from Perkins and Will, and a conversation that I had with him years ago about capturing photogrammetry or point clouds or any kind of scanning. To your point, Adam, there's the super high end version all the way down to, back then it was Matterport. That was kind of like the quote unquote low end, and it was meant for real estate. But again, like the use case, picking the right tool for the job, one person can operate it. You don't need a lot of skill. It's self-registered. It's different points together to create the models. It was capturing photos and textures at the same time. Point clouds are very different and takes a lot more technical expertise to register that and put it together and get a usable thing out of it. And you have to have really high-end software to do it, right? Matterport had a different take on that whole thing. It was democratizing it to a different audience. Now with my phone right here, right? It's like, again, another level of democratization. And getting back to why I brought Nick up was like, I was like, yeah, we're not going to go down this Matterport route because it's not accurate enough, because they claim 99% accuracy, but over 8 feet, that's an inch, right? If you think about it. And it's like, that's not accurate enough for architecture. And Nick's point, and I love talking to Nick because he just grounds the conversation. He says, it's more accurate than an intern. And it's true, right? I mean, it's absolutely true. How many times do you have to send an intern to the job site to measure it? More than once, right? You don't have to do that with the Matterport. You grab it, you just capture it once. And even if it's an inch off, it's still going to be more accurate than an intern with a tape measure, is like really the point of that conversation, right? It's like, do you know how to measure correctly so that the dimensions all add up, so that you don't have to worry about how thick that wall assembly is, right? Because you're measuring correctly. You grabbed all the ceilings. You've located where the lights were in the ceiling, like all the stuff that you would have to go back 2, 3, 4 times for. Now it's in my phone, right? And is it even as accurate as a Matterport? It probably isn't, especially with today's hardware. But it's also a handheld device that runs off of a battery, and it's in motion the whole time, and it's capturing this stuff. And it's just, I think, important to step back every once in a while and just say, okay, this is magic. Like, this is absolutely magic. How do we now leverage it into our workflows to do what we do in better, faster, more efficient, better outcome kind of ways? And I think it's important to take that step back every once in a while and think about it like that, because as soon as you look at it like that, then all of a sudden the possibilities kind of open up and present themselves, rather than us really fighting to show the value. It's like, no, if somebody else can realize that, it actually makes the conversation go a whole lot better, and we can look for really cool ways to integrate this into what we do for a day-to-day business.
Kind of reminds me of the I don't know if you all have seen that Louis C.K. bit years ago when he did the whole bit about getting Wi-Fi for the first time on an airplane, and the guy next to him is like, it went down, and it was like, the guy's complaining, and it's like, this is like magic. You only
realize
you're entitled to it. And I think that it's a great bit. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But it's but even with this, with what's going on with OpenAI in the chat, the LLMs, it's like, I think for those of us that tend to either be early adopters or kind of on the front end of experiencing these things, it really doesn't take us a whole lot of time to be like, I just expect that now. I expect the next thing. And I think the challenge in AEC is that they're complicated workflows. So it's not like any one thing is going to dramatically change that. So I think we're really slow in this industry to integrate some of these or to figure out how to take advantage of those. Anyway, just my thought there. Talking about the scanners, we'll have to get Corey Rubin from ArcVision on, because they're doing, he's been doing a lot of work with building on some of those capabilities in order to do scanning of objects. And I've been using some of those tools, and it's like, wow, this has gotten really good. I know 3, 4, 5 years ago, it wasn't that good. You couldn't really scan an object very well with the phone, but now we're all carrying one of these really pretty good scanner as far as like scanning an object and being able to now bring that in at scale and bring it into a 3D environment. So I think we haven't even really started taking advantage of that, and we're now looking at one of these next gen of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's happening on device. And I think what I would love to hear, Adam, maybe from your perspective with the cloud behind this stuff, is like, what do you see as the potential there, or what is happening currently with the cloud compute machine, like really driving a lot of the computation behind this kind of stuff that's different than on device kind of applications?
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for both. And exactly to your point, Randall, and and Evan, to yours as well. This is magic, right? Being able to scan something from your phone and walk around and it map, simultaneous localization and mapping of your entire space, and the accuracy that it can. Especially, I was looking at, someone posted recently a really interesting breakdown. They did a whole analysis of the LiDAR on the iPhone 14 versus 15, and the 15 is substantially better than the 14. So every jump they're making huge strides. It's incredible. And so, yeah, I think, AWS and the cloud are going to be there for what we do best, right? Which is giving you those building blocks to build on top of. And so when you need that storage, when you need those APIs and that infrastructure to build your application on top of and be creative, right? One thing that we say a lot is that we're taking away a lot of the undifferentiated heavy lifting. And I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle, not having to recreate the wheel, allowing developers and companies more time to focus on business logic and be creative and focus on what they care about and those differentiating factors of their business, and not focusing on the things that people have already figured out 200 times, and now I have to do it again, And so we're trying to take those processes away. So another thing that I talked about a little bit at Confluence was serverless architectures, and one of the reasons I think that all of this technology is just accelerating at such a fast rate right now is this idea of serverless architectures and not needing to spin up and manage your own servers and infrastructure for all of these different use cases. You can kind of pick and choose these services, as Randall mentioned, that you need to build really whatever it is you want to enable your customers to give your customers that value. So it's an exciting moment, I think, to be a technologist in this field, specifically in spatial computing. Everything's moving so quickly. I'm really excited to see where this all goes.
Yeah, I haven't seen if anybody has already started. I'm sure somebody started experimenting with either, when you look at like Dynamo or Grasshopper, or a whole nother group of people were able to, to script and kind of do things that maybe was limited to very few people prior to that, with affecting geometry inside of these kinds of applications. But it'll be interesting to see if, now you can put a put a GPT on the front end of that, and now use spoken word and watch all this stuff. Think about it as going further and further up the stack. It's like I don't have to know anything about Revit anymore. I don't have to know anything about Dynamo anymore. I just have to know how to describe what I want. So it'll be interesting to see as this evolves, and it's moving quickly. I mean, I think we've all experienced things moving quickly, but this really feels like it's moving really quickly if you're watching what's going on with these LLMs in particular, but also the image generation side of it. I mean, they're both advancing, incredibly quickly.
Yeah, one thing that I think we were all concerned about 3 or 4 years ago was the unstructured nature of our data. Graphical representation of floor plans, sections, details. As far as computer vision was concerned, or anybody was concerned, it was just lines on a page, right? And there are symbols that have value to us, at least from the pattern recognition point of view, and that's how that's how all of our graphical assets are like decoded, right? There's values in symbols and hatch patterns and line weights and text notes and leaders, and like what's the difference between a wall edge and a leader, right? Like one has this little symbol at the end of the line to let you know that it's pointing at something, right? And so now what I think is so fascinating is we were concerned years ago that architects' data was not structured, and therefore it was going to be really hard to use it to train anything. And to your guys' point, now it's not a big deal at all, right? Like now we can feed it all of this stuff, classify a few things, it learns from that, and from then on, it's very accurate, right? It just gets more and more accurate, actually, as we go on. And I think what's so interesting about that is before it was going to be this huge, heavy lift for any firm to leverage AI. And now it's like available to anyone at any time if you're just willing to use it, right? And you can get value back out of your work product for the last 3, 4, 5 decades, because graphically it's all kind of the same, right? It doesn't matter if it was produced by hand or by CAD or in BIM, right? If the output was all the same in the end anyway, right? And now you can feed that in and learn something from it. And I think that it's actually kind of a breath of fresh air, and it was unexpected to be so applicable to AEC, let alone the image generation and if you're early on in conceptual design and you just want to not start from a blank page, like that was pretty cool. Architects have been doing that forever by looking through magazines or even Pinterest or whatever. But now you can prompt and you can play and you can be a part of the creation of that stuff. I just think it's really interesting to see how the tides have shifted in AEC with the advancements over the last 2 years in AI alone. And to your point, Randall, it's moving so fast. Since we were in Kentucky a few weeks ago, OpenAI Dev Day has Apple had a big announcement, right? It's just like there's so many things happening every week now. It feels like that it's really changing the game.
Yeah, maybe Adam, with your XR experience and your working at HOK and shop, and if you look at usually when new technologies come about, they're misused. You can always look historically. It's like, okay, we're going to try to do the same thing that we used to do, leveraging this instead of rethinking what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on, because if the, especially the architecture and design industry only looks to use these tools to either accelerate or to get to the same result of the handoff of information, it seems like we're maybe missing the real opportunity, which is how do you change the handoff of that information in order to accelerate and do things differently. So it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, Adam, around XR and what you were seeing. Are there ways that we can get away from, everybody still commits this stuff to a PDF in the end, a set of drawings that end up in a PDF document. Can you talk maybe about glimpses? Have you seen, is that possible to move beyond that so the construction doesn't have to have this? I mean, there's little bits of it going on, but I'll bet 99% of it's still a PDF going to a construction team somewhere.
Yeah. I think that there is movement. I think a big piece of the puzzle is legislation and the Department of Buildings, right? They still need a construction document set, and so that's what we need to produce for them, and they need it in a specific format and X, Y, and Z, and so I absolutely agree with you, right? Whether it's immersive technology, which I think could play a role within that entire transformation, but just that the general idea that we went from AutoCAD, two-dimensional AutoCAD drawings, right, hand drawings, to AutoCAD drawings faster, to making three-dimensional models, to slice those three-dimensional models, to make two-dimensional drawings, to output those PDFs. So we're making 3D models, but just to make 2D drawings is the end goal. And so right, we have these assets, but these assets are never really leveraged downstream in the way that they could be, right? There's underutilization of these assets that take so much energy and intelligence. There's so much embedded intelligence and effort in these assets, right? How could we re-leverage those downstream and more intuitive processes? And I do think immersive technologies really do help, and even in certain government reviews, I know that we've seen some use of immersive technologies. I don't think that a fundamental shift is occurring that I know of, but I think that in the future we're going to see a lot of impact.
Can you imagine one though? I mean, I know when you were at shop, I was familiar with some of the mobile, some of the things that y'all were experimenting with. Have you seen glimpses though of like, this is a better way to get that information onto the job site and for somebody to understand what it is and get this thing built than the 2D information that they're used to getting? Maybe you can talk a little bit about where you've seen those glimpses of hope.
Yeah, definitely. We got to work on some fun projects that I think were a little bit before their time, I would say, and got to work with some incredible customers and general contractors to bring augmented reality onto construction sites. And I think that, right, regardless, we were using mobile AR. We also had the HoloLens, but those are expensive, so distributing them is difficult. And there's the Trimble XR10, which is an incredible device built into the hard hat. You can leverage that. They're doing some incredible things. The long story short, where I see the most value, maybe not in the what we were calling the handoff of the project, but within the process itself, I think that there's a ton of efficiencies to be gained. And I like the word efficiency. A lot of people have negative connotations to efficiency. I think efficiency is good a lot of the time. But there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained by connecting tools in ways that have never been connected. And now we're at this incredible moment in time where we can start connecting these tools in ways that they could never be connected previously. And so one of these projects that we developed was this augmented reality application on a construction site, which allows for a new query mechanism in one-to-one scale augmented reality. And what I mean by a new query mechanism is typical processes in construction sites, they are becoming digitized. They'll have an iPad, a tablet, with the PDFs on them. They'll have a physical drawing set as well somewhere, but if they're walking around the construction site, of course, there's iPads, and that digitization is good and incredibly powerful and to gain efficiency. And so they have these iPads, so they can do augmented reality with these iPads. But what we're finding is we're seeing similar query mechanism improvements in some industry standard tools already, where if you've seen on a PDF where you can actually click the section cut indicator and it'll jump you to that drawing, or you can click that detail item and it'll jump you to that detail page, right? That is a fundamental shift in how we can query and navigate information instead of having to jump between A206 and A902 right, and then cycle through 600 pages back, and then being able to click back and forth and navigate in this fluid way is incredible in 2 dimensions. It's also incredible in 3 dimensions. So we try to take that one step further, where you have your building information model data embedded into this augmented reality experience. When you click a wall and it might not exist yet, you see where that track is supposed to be laid. You click that wall. Now that wall actually has all of the embedded metadata. It knows what associated construction document drawings that wall needs. It knows what the top detail is and the footing detail is for that specific wall. It knows the materiality. It can take you to the wall detail page. So as you click this, you're gaining it's that new query mechanism, very similarly to what we were just talking about, but now in this immersive environment. And I think we're going to see a lot of mechanisms like that. And there are a lot of tools out there like Revisto and a lot of incredible tools. Autodesk, I think, is working on some where these query mechanisms, right, where we can take 100 clicks and decrease that to 1 click. And so there's these huge shifts that are possible now that we can connect these tools in new ways. And I'm really excited about that.
As you're saying that, it also makes me just think that, while obviously these devices have come down in cost enough that I'm sure everybody has one in their pocket on the job site, but it's still cumbersome. It's like, I think we've got to get to this next gen of hardware where it's not going and doing something, but you're kind of immersed in this while you're working, because, construction is different than sitting at your desk. It's like you've got gloves on and whatever it is, right? That now makes it difficult to get to that information. So it feels like we probably have to get to that next gen of hardware and physically letting, we can do everything we can do in software, but if it's cumbersome, then people won't do it. And it's probably one of the things that's holding us back.
Absolutely. Again, another thing, Randall, that gets me really excited is how early we are, right? And how far we've come to this point. When I started building my first virtual reality applications, I think was, something like 2015, and now where we've come from there to here is just pretty insane. Give that, what is that now? 8 years. Give it another 8 years. Where are we going to be?
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. Yeah.
It's interesting that you use the example of like hyperlinking, basically, right? That's the whole idea of Bluebeam, where you can click on a section and it takes you to the section drawing. It's just a hyperlink on the internet, basically, right? From one piece of blue text to another location on the web. And I think what's interesting about that application is the extrapolation of depth of representation that it brings with it, right? So now you're talking about doing it in 3D, fully immersive 3D, spatial 3D, right? Beyond the graphical 2D drawing, but in space. And it makes me think about how LLMs and text prompting is going to apply to that, right? Because you could be in a spatial computing environment on a job site with an augmented reality overlay, and you can just talk to it, right? And you can say, show me the walls. And then you can make a gesture to select a wall and say, show me the head detail, show me the jam detail, show me the sill detail. And it will just bring it up. But I also think about it in the design process, right? Because yeah, that's great when you're there in the all of the prep work that went into the model and the documentation to just surface that information is fantastic. Apply that to the design process. And you have a designer who wants to design a facade detail, and because of the power of LLMs, there's a guy, Gordon Brander, who's developing a note-taking app called Subconscious. And the idea is you can opt in and basically it will build bridges between things that you write and what other people write, and it will connect them. Architecture needs this so badly, right? Because every firm is doing it, repeating the same work over and over again. Everybody's got the same details for the footing. Everybody's got the same details for the curtain wall, etc. And there is no like repository of all of that stuff together in one place, so that there's no best practices, there's no standards. Everybody has their own best practices. Everybody has their own standards. Think about how many more people architecture could touch if we had this kind of global repository of solid information that everybody could use in an open source kind of a manner, but also trust it, right? And I could just see how LLMs that are reaching its tentacles out into all of these different places has the potential to pull that together and connect those dots and make those connections for people, so that as they're designing it, we don't have to worry if that's going to be a waterproof detail, because it's already been proven to be a waterproof detail hundreds of times by many different firms, right? And it just seems like there's so many places along the way that we could gain these kinds of efficiencies, because this thing is so good at structuring the unstructured and actually pulling out the meaning behind the representation that it ended up on a page. And so I'm excited about that. I think that there's some really incredible potential future state here for AEC. And I just wanted to throw that out there, because these are the kinds of things that are running through my mind as you're talking about this different stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that gets the wheels turning in my brain. Definitely, I'm imagining an open sourced repository of architectural information. Sounds like a beautiful idea. I would love to participate in that. Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't want to share though, right? It's kind of inherent. We've tried different things over the years to get people to share, and it's yeah, I'm not sure how you get over that. I've maybe even said this on some different podcasts that I've been on in the past, but I always want to do a debate on whether you're, even the language we use, we call these things assets, like our libraries of reusable stuff. We call them assets, which inherent in the name is it has value.
Mm-hmm.
It does, but is it, my question would be, is it an asset? If you think of it in financial terms, is it an asset or is it a liability? Where is it on your balance sheet? That would be where I would ask somebody and have a debate, because it has to be maintained. If it changes, and then if everybody does have the same one, it's like everybody knows if everybody's got the same thing, why are we spending any more time on that? Why don't we just share that, take that to
Yep.
zero, and compete on something else, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's hyper competitive in business, but to me, those assets, I think, as you all just described, they're substantially similar. So it's like, why do we put so much energy into these things over and over? And to your point, Adam, maybe if those were standardized, the government agencies that have to review these things would be like, I mean, the law did this, right? There's a standard set. You can start a company, a VC-backed company, tech
Right.
company, and everybody uses the same safe note or whatever the legal document of the day is. Everybody's using the same one. And it used to cost, $5,000 or $10,000 in legal fees, and now it's $50, right? And because they just said, why are we, these are all substantially the same. Let's just do the same one. So I think there's that opportunity in this industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do we get that done?
Good question.
I think what's interesting, if you look at like the image generation stuff that Midjourney has done and that OpenAI has done, right? They didn't ask permission. They just scraped all this data together from all these various sources and use that to build their model. And I think I kind of wonder if that's the strategy here, right? It's just like,
just do it.
All of that information is out there. A ton of these plans are in the public domain because they're public projects or whatever.
We should have. I had a little bit of this conversation, Evan, with guys at the Army Corps of Engineers. They get a lot of data submitted to them, and it becomes part of the government's property. And maybe we should have somebody on to just kind of talk about that. Like, hey, what would it mean to scrub all of this and for that to be a kind of there are some databases that the government has created, but I don't think they're used that much and shared, but maybe there is some opportunity to do that.
I'm not advocating for taking copyrighted material in any way, but I just think it's interesting. Like we see where we are and what has happened, and we see the potential of it if it's used for good, right? And I guess that's kind of debatable whether this is a for good kind of a cause or not. But
yeah, it does
seem like.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it does seem like there's value in at least having these conversations to talk about what the potential of the AEC industry could be versus continually remaking the same stuff and everybody's making the same stuff over and over and over again. It just seems like such a waste.
Yeah, it could be debated. I've been in firms where they will tell me that, what they get paid for is that there is no standard detail. Everything is unique, and there's that part of the industry, but the lion's share of it, the way that the walls are put together, the construction methods, the materials that are used, there's not that much different. The differentiation, I would assume, comes in form and function, not so
actual
much
space.
Yeah, like how that's going to be used. So, when you get to just the maintenance of these kind of standardized drawing elements and those kinds of things, I can't imagine that there's that much variation. There is obviously where you're building and what the construction methods are and what the materials that are going to be used obviously varies. But once you get into, I'll bet if I went around the state and looked at the way walls are put together in the average high school, they're all going to look substantially the same.
Yeah. Well, Adam, I guess my last question for you would be around, you mentioned earlier kind of concepts and technologies that you're excited about. I mean, is there anything more specific about hardware or software that you're excited about? Maybe it's not out yet, but you see it on the horizon. You're in spatial computing. This is a new arena for so many people, and you've been involved in it for quite a while now. Like what is it that really gets you excited about what is coming almost immediately next that you think is going to push spatial computing to the next level?
One is check out a company called Luma AI, lumalabs.ai. That's their website. And if you have one of the newer iOS devices, you can start taking scans with your phone using their application, and it's pretty incredible. I've been getting my mind blown recently with that, so that's definitely one to check out. Another one is the Apple Vision Pro, of course. You teed me up on this one for talking about the Apple Vision Pro. I mean, I'm very, very excited about it. I've been, I haven't gotten to try it yet. Hopefully soon. I have heard that it's pretty incredible, and I think that hopefully we're looking at another iPhone moment here. I like the narrative that they're talking through here, right? It's not for games. It's for, it's for enterprise use cases. It's for day to day. What was that, Randall?
Productivity, like increasing.
Yeah. Productivity. Yeah, absolutely. But then also, a lot of these headsets are so good now. The Meta Quest 3 just came out, and it is an incredible device, and so the hardware is getting better very, very quickly. The software is also getting better very, very quickly. The Apple Vision Pro, the last thing that I'll say that I'm really excited about is a few things. One is, if you've built iOS applications, I have in the past, it's going to be a very, very similar development ecosystem and deployment ecosystem out to their app store for the Vision Pro. It's this industry standard, tried and true infrastructure. And as well as there was some research done where headsets, virtual reality headsets, the majority of them are sold after someone physically gets to put it on and try it. And so Apple's brick and mortar presence is going to be really, really key to getting people in headsets, trying these out and understanding the real impact that this can have. And so those are some of the things that I'm excited about moving forward. And just again, on the software side, seeing where this Gaussian splatting stuff, I think it's, again, it might be a little bit before its time, but the technology under the hood is accelerating so quickly. We could see some production implementations into very substantial applications relatively soon. It feels like they're decreasing the gap to get something from research and development that just came from some PhD student into an application production level workload, where now we can leverage this across the board. Like the amount of time that it's taking is just compressing so fast. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think
with the Apple Vision Pro, I just wanted to throw it out there that I think this is one of those opportunities that people are going to want to rethink the way that why they do what they do and how they communicate it with people. Because to me, it's not about just getting inside your model. I think it's going to be an appropriate tool to use to help somebody have an experience they have never, ever had before. And there's so much opportunity in there for us as AEC professionals to really change the game of how the process goes, but also how those outcomes are going to be. People are going to be able to have experiences before they have the physical experience in a very different way. I mean, people have these now in VR, but I think with the Vision Pro, it is going to take it to another level, and they are priced appropriately. I think it's within the realm of possibility for AEC professionals and not consumers. And I think that is going to be really good for us as an industry to position ourselves as leaders in using devices like that, where the normal consumer is just a little out of reach for most of them. That's not going to last for long. Like, that head start is not going to be there for very long. And so I would really hope that we jump on that as a profession, because this is right in our wheelhouse. The whole spatial thing, right? To go back to where you started the conversation, Adam, with the work that you're doing, like, it's right in our wheelhouse. And this is the perfect marriage of what we do, domain expertise and technology and storytelling and experiences. And I think that it's going to be a big deal for us if architects are willing to take that on. And I hope that they are.
Good point.
I agree. Yeah, Randall, did you have something else?
Well, I was just, when you were talking about, I think there's obviously things are moving quickly, and you can look at the things that are now able to be done on this piece of hardware and the compute power that's in your hand on one end of it, like the scanning and the things that are going on that end, and then you look at what's going on with the Microsofts and Amazons and Googles on the compute on the these LLMs. It's a massive amount of compute power that's being used. So we've got innovation kind of happening at both directions at both times. Things that take massive amounts of infrastructure. That infrastructure is now in place and growing quickly to be able to do things that take a lot of horsepower, which is what is driving a lot of this AI innovation. And then down at what we would now consider the low end, you can do an incredible amount with the processing power that's right there on that mobile device. So it's exciting times coming from both directions, I think.
Yeah, I'll just throw it out there. One last thing that I think is so cool, Randall, is that because we have these devices that you can do, like in the iRhino 3D app, it's only available through beta testing, but anybody can sign up to become a beta tester for their app. And you can do room scan with it, and you can do object scanning with it. But pair that with a Vision Pro, and I could scan a room and I could just jump right into it and be anywhere on the planet, right? And for a designer like that, to me, with at least half of that workflow, I already own it, right? I already own the device and I get the software. I'm just waiting for that headset to drop, right? But as an architect, I think that is just phenomenal where we've come to in a very short period of time. And this is going to be a cool next few years for us, for sure. I'm so thrilled about it.
Good time to be technologist in the AEC industry.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
Well,
Hey.
Adam, I just want to say thanks. You've participated in these Confluence events the last few years and been very generous with your time and always bring a lot of great insights. And I just want to say thanks for coming to the physical events, and now that we're starting this podcast to try to get this information out to a broader audience. So thank you for participating.
Yeah, of course. Hey, thank you both for having me. Again, Confluence was amazing this year. And Evan, thank you again for everything. Randall, this has been awesome.
We're going to be the next in-person event's going to be in New York in the spring. So that'll be right in your backyard. So we'll have you involved in that one as well.
Sounds good. I'll be there. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.